have exceeded 120 million people, more than twice the population of Italy. Filippo Grandi, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, said that behind these stark and rising numbers, that is the countless human tragedies, that suffering must galvanize the international community to act urgently to tackle the root causes of forced displacement. The United Nations agency said a fifth of those forcibly displaced were now in the poorest countries in the world, such as Chad and Sudan. However, the world's largest recipients of new asylum applications at 1.2 million was the United States, and next with 329,000 people. Applications was Germany, where migration has become a dominant topic of political debate and is credited with helping the far right perform strongly in the recent European elections. The United Nations Humanitarian Commission rights also found that a disproportionate number of children were affected, with minors making up to 40% of all forcibly displaced people, despite accounting for just 30% of the world's population. During the year, the global refugee population increased by 7% to reach 43.4 million people, driven by conflict in Gaza, with 6 million Palestinian refugees among the total, and in Sudan, where 10.8 million people were forcibly displaced at the end of last year, a number growing by thousands each day. South African lawmakers are expected to elect the country's president on Friday after being sworn in at the first sitting of parliament. That will also reveal the kind of unity government that the ruling African National Congress has managed to cobble together after losing its majority for the first time since 1994. The lawmakers are also expected to elect Parliament's new Speaker and Deputy Speaker, choices that will be determined by the negotiations that have taken place between the ANC and opposition parties since the country's election results were declared nearly 2 weeks ago. Parties are under pressure to conclude negotiations by Thursday to fulfill the constitutional requirements to swear in lawmakers and elect the president within 14 days of election results being declared. The African National Congress won 40% of the national votes during the country's highly contested elections, followed by the Democratic Alliance with just over 21%, and the newly formed Mkhonto Wasizwe Party with about 15% of the votes in their first ever elections. The ANC has opted to form a national unity government that will include most political parties that contested the elections instead of a straightforward coalition with a few parties. However, initial negotiations have laid bare the deep divisions between South Africa's political parties, with some already rejecting the proposed unity government, while others have agreed to be part of it. The ANC's National Executive Committee, the party's highest decision-making body between conferences, will meet in Cape Town on Thursday to finalize the agreements it has made with the other parties and will make an announcement afterwards. Argentina's Senate passed a sprawling bill on Wednesday that is key to Libertarian President Javier Milei's economic reforms plans, and while protesters set fire and clashed with police in the streets outside Congress, the upper house was divided down the middle over the bill, which was passed in a general vote. After the head of chamber, Vice President Victoria Villarreal broke the 36 tie. The bill passed after a marathon debate, with senators now set to vote on each article of the package designed to boost investment by privatizing state entities and providing incentives for businesses. The bill initially passed the lower house of deputies in April will now head back for another vote following changes in the Senate. Today we are two Argentinas, Villarreal said as she voted in favor of the reform. In favor of the reform. A violent Argentina that sets a car on fire throws rocks and debates the exercise of democracy, and another Argentina with workers waiting with a great pain and sacrifice for the change that they voted for. Milei's government, which controls only a minority of seats in both chambers, had been bargaining to win over allies. It knew the bill would face changes, but had been hoping to at least eke out the general approval. The main left-leaning Peronist opposition bloc, closely allied to the unions, had voted down what is known as the Basis Bill, with voting still pending on a separate fiscal package. The bill is key to Milei's plans to overhaul an embattled economy with inflation near 300% and includes plans for privatizing public firms, granting special powers to the president and spurring investments. But some protesters fear that it will leave them further exposed to rising unemployment and consumer prices. Argentine people's lives are at play. We've drunk this poison several times, and to have zero inflation with zero economic activity. Protester and social leader Luis Delia has said that as thousands protest the planned reforms. Mexico's former foreign minister, the scion of a legendary political family and a party boss, are in contention for top energy-related jobs in President-elect Claudia Sheinbaum's government, sources said, suggesting a political savvy will trump technical expertise in running state energy companies. The cabinet of President-elect Claudia Sheinbaum will be a mix of old and new faces when it is announced next week. Sources on her team said that as she looks to pursue her predecessor's main priorities while putting her own stamp on certain key areas. The state oil company, Pemex, and state power firm, the Federal Electricity Commission, are vital to President Andrea Manuel Lopez Obrador's vision for Mexico's energy self-sufficiency. Sheinbaum, a climate scientist, faces the tough balancing act of honoring her pledge to continue Lopez Obrador's policies while also improving Mexico's environmental record and increasing renewable power generation. One of the names doing the rounds to take the reins at Pemex, the heavily indebted oil producer, which remains vital to government finances, is the ethnohistorian Lázaro Cárdenas. Cárdenas is a former advisor to López Obrador, a former governor and son of the historic leader of the Mexican Front and Mexican Left, Cuauhtémoc Cárdenas. Two sources close to Sheinbaum said that Cárdenas was a front runner for the role, though he could also be an option to head up the energy ministry. Mexican authorities announced on Wednesday that they found the remains of some of the 63 miners who were trapped 18 years ago. The accident is considered one of the biggest mining tragedies in the country. It wasn't until 2020 that President Andrea Manuel Lopez Obrador made a promise to recover the bodies that the process began. Three consecutive governments opted not to try for the rest, saying it will be too dangerous and costly with no guarantees of success, but victims' relatives continue to press authorities on the issue over the years. Lopez Obrador put the Federal Electricity Consumer Commission, the country's public utility known as the CFE, in charge of the mining and burning of coal to reach the long-burning miners. In the chamber where the remains were found there, we had 13 miners working the day of the accident, according to the Interior Ministry. The government indicated that it has not yet determined if an explosion caused the mine's collapse or the state prosecutor's office, in collaboration with the National Search Commission and the National Institute of Genomics Medicine, will begin analyzing the remains for identification and try to determine the cause of the accident. Thousands of residents deserted the small Mexican town of Tila, fleeing an intensive 3-day siege by heavily armed men and leaving it a ghost town, and some are still too afraid to return, despite government troops now patrolling the empty streets. All night we listened to bullets go by, said Maria, a resident of the southern Mexico town of Tilla. Some 140 miles from the Chiapas state of capital of Tuxtla Gutiérrez. On the night of June 4th, dozens of heavily armed men arrived in Tilla in trucks and began shooting at houses, businesses, and setting buildings on fire, witnesses told news agencies. A man who did not identify himself for safety reasons said that armed men returned in the next day with high-caliber weapons and military outfits. The violence in the latest 3 days until June the 7th, when the army arrived, and state authorities have since said that some 50,000 troops have been deployed to the area and 6 suspects detained. All of Tilla's inhabitants, some 4,000 people, fled their homes, some taking government buses to nearby shelters, where many remain today, sleeping on mats and on the ground. We are not going back. We are not going back, said a 60-year-old merchant who identified himself as Saul, until we know that when we leave our houses, they are not going to kill us. A dozen residents who fled the area told news agencies that the attackers, many who covered their faces and some of whom appeared to be underage, looted stores, set cars on fire, and tried to break into houses. Many Mexican communities have become ghost towns as people seek safety from the gang violence by applying for asylum in the United States. While the government maintains the violence in Tilla resulted from a local land dispute, its residents say organized crime groups have long been extorting them and would punish those who did not pay up. Thank you. A widespread power outage hit Puerto Rico Wednesday night, leaving more than 340,000 customers without electricity after two of the U.S. territory's power plants shut down. The capital of San Juan was left without power, as well as neighboring municipalities, including Bayamon, Caguas, and Carolina. Luma Energy, which operates transmission and distribution for Puerto Rico's power authority, said on X, and the people continue to suffer the consequences of the lack of sense of urgency that private operators are demonstrating. Both Luma and General PR are selected as private operators under Pelosi's administration. It is the most recent in a string of blackouts to hit Puerto Rico, which is still trying to rebuild the gale after Hurricane Maria raised it down in 2017 as a Category 2 storm. The outage prompted the mayor of San Juan, capital, Miguel Romero, to declare a state of emergency late Wednesday as he accused Luma of sharing limited information about the ongoing blackouts. There are thousands of children with specific feeding needs, as well as adults who often need therapy machines to protect their health and often save their lives. The decree stated scores of Puerto Ricans took to social media to condemn the most recent outage and demanded the ouster of Luma, noting that it occurred amidst excessive heat warnings. Not all on the island of 3.2 million people with a poverty rate of more than 40% can afford generators or solar panels. Canada soon plans to start sending a total of about 2,000 surplus unarmed rockets to Ukraine, as well as a selection of other weapons, Defense Minister Bill Blair said on Thursday. Canadian specialists have spent the last few months ensuring that the safe operator of the rockets, which do not have warheads, he said in a statement. Canada does plan to eventually ship some warheads to Ukraine, a spokesperson for Blair said separately via email, and did not give details. Canada is also sending 29 German-made remotely controlled weapon stations that can be attacked from a variety of armed vehicles, as well as 130,000 rounds of small arms and ammunition. Since Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022, Canada has committed over $10.2 billion United States dollars in total assistance to Kiev, including 40 billion euros including 40 billion euros in military aid. The Chinese state media said that
from across the ocean to the land beyond.
2024, following the following the reform of diesel subsidies that began this month, a Treasury official said on Thursday. Diesel fuel prices in much of Malaysia rose by more than 50% on Monday as the government's launched its long-promised effort to shift away from costly blanket subsidies towards a targeted approach that mainly helps lower-income groups. Treasury Secretary General Johan Mahmood American said that aid redirected from the subsidy cuts and exemptions to some diesel users were expected to keep rising prices in check. The impact of inflation is such that it will still remain with the official band, and he told a conference on structural reforms on Thursday. He did not say whether the government's outlook will change following the adjustments to other blanket subsidies, such as for Ron 95 petrol, also expected to begin this year. Malaysia heavily subsidizes the cost of items such as cooking oil, rice, and other fuels, an expense that has ballooned in recent years, straining government coffers. The Philippine authorities have launched a crackdown on illegal offshore gambling operators, several run by Chinese firms, as calls to ban these activities mount due to their alleged links to criminal syndicates. Appear in the Philippines without a license, the chief of the country's gaming regulator said on Thursday, around 6 times more than the 46 legitimate gaming operators in the area. Together with the police, we search for these illegal operators, conduct raids, and shut them down. Alejandro Tengso, chairman of the state regulator Philippines Amusement and Gaming Corp. Google, it told news agencies in a phone interview. The online gaming industry emerged in the Philippines in 2016 and grew exponentially as operators capitalized on the gaming laws to target customers in China, where gaming and gambling is pardoned. At their peak, Philippines offshore gambling operators, or POGOs, totaled 300 and employed more than 3,000 Chinese workers. But the pandemic and tighter tax rules have forced many to relocate or go underground, Texo said. The crackdown was triggered by reports of POGO-related crimes such as human trafficking, torture, kidnapping, and fraudulent activities like credit card, crypto investments, and love scams when criminals adopt fake online identities to persuade victims to get them money. In March, law enforcers raided a POGO facility in Pampanga province that led to the rescue of more than 800 workers, including Filipino and Chinese nationals, local media said. Security officers have also expressed concern over the illegal POGOs, with Defense Minister saying criminal syndicates posing as POGOs were a national security concern, where the National Security Council said that the illegal activities must be tolerated. Police in India's territory of Jammu and Kashmir blamed blinked arch-rival Pakistan on Wednesday for a spate of militant attacks that killed 12 people and injured dozens over the last 3 days. Pakistan claims that the Himalayan region, which has been by militant violence since the start of an anti-Indian insurgency in 1909, but they drop you The insurgency in 1989 that killed tens of thousands, although violence has waned in recent years. Our hostile neighbor wants to damage our peaceful environment. Amand Jain, police chief of Jammu, told us in a reference to Pakistan, with India was accused of stoking violence in the region, for decades. Person for Pakistan's foreign ministry did not immediately respond to a request comments from newsmen. It has denied such claims in the past, saying it was giving only political and diplomatic to the insurgency. Gun battles in the area on Tuesday killed two militants and a paramilitary soldier, while injuring a civilian and 6 security personnel, authorities said. The third gun battle broke out late on Wednesday in the Doda area of Jammu region, injuring 1 police. And that those on higher levels were unable to escape. He said that the building had filled with thick smoke. 3 of the 11 Filipino workers in the building were brought to hospitals, while the status of 5 remaining unclear, and unclear, and 3 were saved, the Philippine Migrant Workers Ministry has said in a statement on Thursday. You are watching international news on an Atlantic Television Network. We'll be back shortly after this break. Please stay tuned. And all after that, they
every day.
Glad to have you back on International News on Atlantic Television Network. And now to the rest of our stories. Hamas requested changes to ceasefire proposals not significant, that the changes that Hamas has requested to The changes that Hamas has requested to a ceasefire proposal by the United States are not significant and include the complete withdrawal of Israeli troops from the Gaza Strip, a senior leader in the group had said on On Thursday, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on Wednesday that Hamas proposed numerous changes, some unworkable, but that mediators were determined to close the gaps. The U.S. had said that Israel had accepted its proposal, but Israel has not publicly stated that. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has repeatedly said that Israel will not commit to ending its campaign before Hamas is eliminated. The senior Hamas leader said that the organization had demanded to choose a list of 100 Palestinians with long sentences to be released from Israeli jails. The Israeli document had excluded 100 prisoners from long sentences and restricted releases to only prisoners with sentences of less than 15 years remaining. The Hamas officials said that there are no significant amendments that, according to Hamas leadership, warrant objection, said the Hamas leader. The group's demands also include the reconstruction of Gaza, the lifting of the blockade, including opening border crossings, allowing the movement of people, and transporting goods without restrictions. Negotiators from the U.S., Egypt, and Qatar have tried for months to mediate a ceasefire in the conflict, which has killed tens of thousands of Palestinians and devastated the heavily populated enclave and freed the hostages, more than 100 of whom are believed to remain captive in Gaza. Israel tanks advanced deeper into western area of Rafah amidst one of the worst nights of bombardment from air, ground, and sea, forcing many families to flee their homes and tents under darkness, residents said on Thursday. Residents said that the Israeli forces thrust towards the Al-Mawasi area of Rafah near the beach, which is designated as a humanitarian area in all announcements and maps published by the Israeli army since it began its Rafah offensive in May. The Israeli military denied in a statement that it had launched any strikes inside Al-Mawasi humanitarian zone. Israel said its assaults aimed to wipe out Hamas' last intact combat units in Rafah, a city which has sheltered more than 1 million people within the latest advance possible. Most of the people have now moved north towards Khan Yunis and Deir al-Balal in central Gaza Strip. The Israeli military said in a statement it was continuing intelligence-based targeted operations in Rafah, saying forces in the past day had located weapons and killed Palestinian gunmen in close-range combat. Over the past day, the military said that it had struck 45 targets across Gaza Strip from the air, including military structures, military cells, rocket launchers, and tunnel shafts. Israel had ruled out peace until Hamas is eradicated and much of Gaza lies in ruins. But Hamas has proven resilient, with militants resurfacing to fight in areas where Israeli forces had previously declared to have defeated them and pulled back. Authorities in Greece are closing down the Acropolis in Athens during the afternoon on Thursday, which is Greece's most popular ancient site, will be closed from midday to 5 p.m. because of the heat. All other archaeological sites in the Greek capital will be closed during the same hours, and people who have booked visits for that period can use their tickets later in the day, the ministry have said. Temperatures are expected to exceed 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit on Thursday in much of central and southern Greece, including Greater Athens, the Cyclades Islands, and Crete. Officials are on heightened alert for wildfires which plague Greece every summer, and authorities in Athens are providing air-conditioned areas in the public and have issued funds to secondary schools where end-of-year and university entrance exams are being held. The weather is expected to cool Friday and Saturday. French national Louis Arnaud arrived in France on Thursday after he was released by Iran, where he was imprisoned for over 20 months for allegedly taking part in nationwide protests. Arnaud was greeted at the Paris-Le Bourget airport by his family in presence of French Legion. French President Emmanuel Macron posted on the social media platform X on Wednesday that Louis Arnaud is free and thanked Oman, an interlocutor for the West, with Iran and all those who helped bring this happy outcome. Arnaud had been arrested in September 2022 along with other Europeans. French media reported that Arnaud, a consultant in his 30s, was accused of having taken part in nationwide protests sparked by the death of Mahsa Amini, a young woman who died after being assaulted for allegedly not wearing her headscarf or hijab to the linking of security forces. Macron expressed his concern for 3 other French nationals who are still imprisoned in Iran, including Cécile Colas and Jacques Paris, who were arrested in May 2022. French authorities identified Colas and Paris as a teachers' union official and her partner on vacation in the country. Iranian authorities accused them of protesting with Iranian teachers and taking part in an anti-government rally. The 3rd French national detained in Iran has only been identified by his name, Olivier. I call on Iran to release them without delay, Macron wrote on X, while still working for them to be freed. Sejourne said on Thursday that diplomacy is still mobilized and this will be the next victory for tomorrow, but here we must be satisfied with a great diplomatic victory for France. And viewers, this is where we wrap it up on this edition of International News on Atlantic Television Network. I am your host, Raymond Ken Mbata. Do well to follow us up on our social media handles. On X, formerly Twitter, Atlantic TV Net, on Facebook and YouTube, Atlantic Television Network, on Instagram, Atlantic TV Network. And watch us live on our website, atlanticnetwork.tv.